This is the XPPEN Deco Pro Gen 2. It's a sleek upgrade on their first generation Pro screenless tablet, and it comes with a pen case I was not expecting to describe as satisfying. There's more to it than that, of course. Let's see what it's like to paint with. Hey, Ryan here. So the first tablet I bought with my own pennies was the first generation Deco Pro from XPPEN. It was a big step up from my smaller hand-me-down Wacom Graphire, which still sits on the shelf behind me, and it was a real pleasure to use. So I was excited to see XPPEN bring a fresh design for their Gen 2, and along with it, their X3 Pro Stylus tech. I bounce around between tablets a fair bit, but when it comes to screenless tablets, my weapon of choice has been the Wacom Intuos Pro, both the 2013 and the 2017 versions. They're great tablets, but they don't come cheap. The Deco Pro comes in at more than half the price though, so for an intermediate or a professional artist on a tighter budget, might this be a solid alternative that still delivers a high quality drawing experience? Now before we jump in, I just want to note that XPPEN did not send this tablet to me, they did not ask for the review. I purchased this myself for review purposes, so the opinions here are entirely my own. Okay, inside the box you get the tablet, of course. This is the medium-sized 9x6, a USB-C cable, a standard drawing glove, the ACK05 shortcut remote, this case which houses the X3 Pro Stylus, a wireless dongle, and some spare pen nibs. Okay, firstly, this is a screenless tablet, so you're going to be looking at your computer monitor ahead of you while your hand is drawing on the tablet flat on your desk. This can take some getting used to, but I find it much better for my posture. It's got this nice slope to the front side, so you don't have that sudden drop-off when you're drawing or tapping on UI elements in the lower portion of the screen. I think the ratio of body to active area here is pretty good too, with the bounds of the active area not being too close to the edge of the tablet. There are 5 indicator lights on the surface. These 4 mark the edges of the drawing area, and they light up when you bring your pen closer to the surface. And this one indicates whether or not the tablet is on charge or in Bluetooth mode. The tablet is said to have 10 hours of battery life, but I didn't specifically test this out. The surface is a smooth matte, but there is a light texture here. Some people complain about the tooth of the 2017 Intuos Pro model being a bit too much. The Deco Pro is smoother than that. I can definitely feel the difference when I have them side by side, and I would say that this is maybe a bit closer to the 2013 version for those who have felt the difference. At the back is a USB-C port, a power button, and something unexpected, a Bluetooth switch. You can connect this tablet with up to 2 devices and use this switch to toggle between them. I actually find this kind of interesting, quite useful, as I'm often testing software across systems, so with the flip of the switch I can move over from my Windows machine over to the MacBook. But this is probably a bit unnecessary for most people. On the underside we have this brushed metal plate, quite similar to the first generation Deco Pro, and rubber feet to stop it from sliding around. Now you'll notice here that the tablet surface actually extends past the plate, and this gives a bit of that floating look. And the height of it is actually just perfect for me to lose my pencil more than once on my desk. Now a major difference from the first generation Deco Pro to this is that the wheel and the shortcut buttons have been separated from the tablet into this wireless remote. It's a pretty simple design, not a whole lot to say here. It's light, you can hold it in your hand while you're working, though it's probably more practical to place flat on the desk. You've got 10 individual customizable keys, and then the wheel with 4 functions that you can cycle through by pressing on the button in the middle. Along the sides, there's a USB-C port for charging or cable connection, and a power switch. Now one quirk with this, if you are on Windows 11, is that your Bluetooth discoverability setting must be set to advanced, otherwise your computer won't detect the controller. It'll pick up the tablet though, just not the controller. It's a weird Windows thing, and it took me a while to figure this out, but not a big deal once you know about it. You can't program combinations of buttons into unique shortcuts, but you can combine the existing shortcuts that you've programmed in. So for example, if I have this set to a modifier like Control and this one to Z, I can press them together to trigger the undo action. Now when it comes to shortcuts, remotes like this are definitely a personal preference thing. A lot of people prefer to just stick with their keyboards because all the possibilities are laid out there in front of you, and you likely have a pretty strong muscle memory for finding the keys that you need without having to look or think about it. It's nice that they have the remote included, but it's not going to be replacing my toolbox. Then we have the brushed metal pen case. It's got this really satisfying press-click mechanism, and sliding it open, I feel like I'm unsheathing a sword or something. Inside, we've got the X3 Pro Stylus, the first to have 16,000 levels of pressure sensitivity. More on that in a moment. It's got that typical tapered Pro Stylus design, slightly broader front with a rubber grip, 2 programmable buttons, and over on the end we have an eraser. There are 4 spare standard nibs and 4 felt ones for a bit more friction. And then of course the Bluetooth dongle if needed. Now before we get to drawing, we've got to download the driver from the website first. They've refreshed this too, kind of like what they're doing here. Here you can customize everything about the tablet, the pen, and the remote. Now another thing with shortcut remotes like this, it can be tricky to know what to actually program these buttons to do. Thankfully, it's already got shortcuts preloaded to get you started, but then there's the matter of committing that layout and hand movement to memory. With the first generation Deco Pro, which was also my first time having shortcut buttons on a tablet, I drew the layout and the shortcuts on a page and stuck that to the side of my screen to help me figure out which buttons were where, and that really helped with getting started. Anyway, time to draw with this. I've got Clip Studio Paint open over here with a slightly adjusted G pen for testing. I want to first check out the quality of the lines that the pen produces, how it responds to pressure, because this pen has improved initial activation, which means I have to apply a lot less pressure in order to get lines to appear. This is a way more important spec than pressure levels in my opinion, and yeah, it's really good. This is quite an improvement on older XPPEN tablets. The initial activation force here is only 3 grams, slightly more than Wacom's 1 gram on the Pro Pen 2. The pressure response is great. I can very easily get a nice variation of thin and thick lines. Actually, moving back from thick to thin is really smooth. And I had no issues drawing lines, maintaining consistent line weights and consistent pressure. Diagonal lines look fairly good, but I am seeing some minor wobble, nothing that a touch of stabilization or smoothing can't knock out. This only really occurs when drawing very slow diagonal lines, but drawing at a normal pace, I don't have any issues with the lines that are produced. If you're using this for painting, even less of an issue. There are 60 degrees of tilt recognition, which, again, respond really well. If I'm using a chalky brush, the texture spreads out, or if I've got one of my brushes to change angle according to how I tilt the pen, it all works really nicely. Sketching with this feels really good. I'm definitely noticing how little pressure I need to get pencil lines to show up. Now, speaking of those pressure levels, this boasts over 16,000 levels of pressure sensitivity, right? That's a huge range. It sounds really big, but honestly, not something most people will even be able to notice, or at least I didn't. For me, it's all in that initial activation force, and that's part of why, for a long time, the older Wacom pens with 2,000 levels of pressure sensitivity would still outdo a lot of the competition. That said, though, the quality gap is closing. Another thing to point out here is the size of the tablet in relation to my monitor. I'm using a 27-inch display, and I actually find the size is okay, but it's a bit on the small side. Normally, I would recommend going with the large or the extra large size when you're drawing on a screen this big. A small tablet with a big screen means that small hand movements equal big movements across the screen. So with a tablet that is a bit bigger, with a smaller gap between the size of the tablet and the screen, you'll have a lot more control. Moving on, I want to skip on over to Rebelle 7 now, try out some painting. I mentioned in my last video that I should probably get to a more serious African penguin painting sometime, so here's me making good on that. And while I'm at it, I'm going to take the X3 Pro roller stylus for a spin. This is a separate purchase, and it's an interesting one because it drops the eraser and pushes the buttons back a bit to make space for this roller wheel, something that I haven't seen on a stylus since Wacom's airbrush pens. Like with the wheel of the controller, you can set this to zoom or rotate, change brush size, and in the driver settings, you can also set custom keybinds. Your driver will automatically detect which pen you're using, so you can customize them in the way where they're 2 completely different tools, right? I'm in 2 minds though about how I feel about this pen. On the one hand, I like the added functionality, but I prefer to have a button under my index finger for the eyedropper. It just allows me to change colors like really quickly, picking from the canvas. But maybe it's just personal preference. It's taken me a while to get used to because I have these habits already well established. Now, how does this fare against the Intuos Pro? This here is the 2017 version together with the Pro Pen 2, and it costs substantially more. just over double the price. But it does still have the edge when it comes to the pen experience. The initial activation is better. It also has multi-touch. Again, this is a personal preference thing on a device like this. Many people just turn it off and use their keyboard shortcuts for navigation. I was one of those people because I found on the 2013 version of the Intuos Pro, the multi-touch just wasn't as smooth as I was used to from the iPad, for example. The surface is a bit toothier, and if you are a heavier user, both in terms of how hard you press when you draw and how much time you spend drawing every day, this could lead to faster than expected wear on the nibs. I think for a lot of people, it would be difficult to justify the higher spend, unless you're already working professionally and you have been using Wacom devices for a long time already. Another thing I'll say about Wacom is that their drivers are reliable. And this is an important thing for many working professionals. I've never experienced any quirks with my drivers across the various Wacom tablets that I've used. With the Deco Pro, I did have it recognizing one of my pens as a different one from a tablet I'd reviewed a year or so ago. And once I had the mapping go a bit wonky when unplugging and switching to Bluetooth mode. A quick hop into the driver settings to change something really isn't a big deal for me. They were fairly minor things. So overall, I have to say that the experience of drawing and painting with the Deco Pro Gen 2 has been really good. I've been using it on and off for several months, and so far, I can't really say anything bad about it that would put me off. The pen is comfortable and accurate, the surface has just the right amount of texture, and the wireless performance hasn't been noticeably different from using it with a wired connection. The shortcut remote is fine if you don't have one, it's pretty simple, does the job. In terms of durability, I can't say for sure yet, but in my time of using it, nothing gives me any doubts. The tablet and the pen feel solid. So for now, I have no reservations about recommending the Deco Pro Gen 2, and I think it will serve you well if you choose to buy it. Now, I've got some unfinished business on this here canvas. I'll see you all in another video soon.